slideshow that we put together actually during the annual meeting. Some of you, I think, certainly were involved with it, on why state archives matter. And Becky Johnson put it all together, and we thought it would be kind of fun to show that. So, Becky, do you want a slideshow is? We have music with this. So Matt Veach and other people to compose something for us for next time we show the slideshow.
I thought we had to sing for us.
Well, we do that too. Thank you. That was fun. I'm going to throw over to Sarah Coons, President of CoSA. Sarah?
Okay, thank you. I hope people can hear me. We're going to get started here once Becky passes me the slides, and I'll be able to have control to change the slides.
Change them, Sarah.
All right, go. So who's on the program today? I will be doing a lot of the talking, and I'll call on some other members of the CoSA board who had roles in different reports and other activities at our business meeting and work session to fill you in a little bit in more detail on their work areas and what was discussed at the annual meeting. Agenda for today, as I said, we're going to highlight some things from the work session, the business meeting, talk a little bit about the awards, and then finish with a little bit about of what's on deck for CoSA in the next several weeks and months. Session was a very productive time. We spent a lot of it doing discussions, tabletops, open discussions, where we thought about a particular area where we could together and address a question or two and then report back to the group. And the first question that we really tackled regarded the funding model for CoSA and what that would look like. And I turned the discussion over to Jim Corden to handle this part of it because he is the CoSA treasurer. So, Jim, are you ready?
Sure. Everybody, so Chris Ward had been working for quite some time with the Finance Committee about how best that CoSA could position itself for the future. And some challenges that came about were caused by NHPRC looking at reducing the SNAP grants or eliminating CoSA dues as an option for SNAP grants. And a big of CoSA's revenue comes from obviously membership dues. And so that caused the board to begin thinking, well, what would we do if we ever faced that? And what are models or different models we should be implementing to move forward here? And so the fee was tasked with working on this, and Chris and Ann Ackerson did a lot of work to try and come up with some ideas. So one of the things they looked at is, would it make sense for CoSA to change the way membership is structured and creating different opportunities there? Maybe $2,500 means you're a full member, but you can buy additional services at a different level, and so there was some discussion about that. There was also looking at expanded pool of corporate sponsors and individual donors, and I think you all probably know in a few years we've increased the amount that Ancestry is giving to CoSA by 25%, and last year Family Search gave $10,000, and so the development committee, and I think Sandy Treadway is going to talk in a bit, done a great job of increasing the corporate sponsorships that the is bringing in, but continuing to look at that. But probably the most exciting component is looking at opportunities to develop earned income for CoSA. Earned income, not simply investment income, although that might be a small factor here, but also the idea of trying to take some of the intellectual property that CoSA has developed over time, whether the IPER, closest to home, Siri, repackaging some of those things or components of those, or revamping them somewhat, modernizing them, and then making them available to other organizations and drive some revenue into CoSA would be one way to do it. But really looking at trying to how we can generate another revenue stream and balance out where CoSA's income is coming from. Because right now, earned income is probably 3 or 4% of the entire pie. And I think we would probably like to move that into a much bigger percentage of the revenue and have reliance on some of these other things in case there's a problem. The other big things we're looking at is looking at, as far as this earned income, looking at additional collaborations. Maybe there's opportunities for us to work with AASLH, NAGARA, SAA, other organizations, ARMA, and if there's ways for us to take some of the expertise we're developing in electronic records or some of these things we've done in the past and creating revenue streams from those. So I think the highlights, unless there's any questions on the funding models. And
all right, thank you, Jim. And certainly if anyone has any questions during the webinar, let us know. You can put a question in chat, or there will be a question and answer portion at the end of the webinar if something occurs to you along the way. So again, that was a very productive conversation to kick us off in terms of the work session. The next thing we tackled was taking a look at CoSA's strategic plan and thinking about our 4 major goals: to have responsive programs, to work on advocacy and awareness on behalf of state archives issues, to continue our access and collaboration focus, and then always to build sustainable programs for membership. So taking a look at those 4 strategic goals, we spent some time in the work session in tabletop discussions thinking about where should CoSA place emphasis on resources in 2015. And these were the report out kind of pieces that came from those discussions, the major themes. Included working with NHPRC to further fund programs. And as a part of that, we spent some time talking about the importance of SHRABs and clarifying that role and the need of SHRABs for NHPRC and for within our own states. And so there was a definite sort of bent to think about maybe some more additional resources for new SHRAB members and for SHRAB boards to make them as strong as they can be. We also talked a little bit about advancing our needs and issues to various stakeholders and what would that look like. The conversation spills over a little bit into advocacy, which we'll get to in a minute, but there's a definite desire to spend resources and time get our message out to stakeholders of various types, and that would include fed funders, corporations within our own state, and other national groups that might have associations within our state, such as the National Association of Secretaries of State or Governors Association or the Association for the State CIOs, groups like that. And then leading to that, we also discussed a little bit about the importance of expanding relationships with allied organizations. And that included organizations that might not be ones that we're working with yet. We certainly have good working relationship with organizations such as NASCIO, the National Association of State CIOs, but there are other ones out there, and we're going to hear a little bit in a minute about some preliminary discussions we've had with the Sunlight Foundation. So there are possibilities there that are exciting of ways that we can work with allied organizations or, as we said earlier, ARMA, AIM, are there other groups that we can partner with? And then, of course, continuing our focus on electronic records training. Piece that was around the strategic plan and the brainstorm time about where should our emphasis in a year. Records training leads nicely to CIRI. We spent some time in the annual meeting talking about what has been done already in the State Electronic Records Initiative, and it's pretty impressive. In the last year, we've had 11 webinars. We completed the first of 2 Advanced Electronic Records Institutes. The PERT portal was developed and rolled out and is ready for use and growth. That's really a growth opportunity. We continued with the Advocacy Day, the 1010 Electronic Records Awareness Day on October 10th. There's been a lot of exciting things going on in CIRI. But what we spent time talking about after the update was what has worked, what were people liking about training that they had seen, what was their preference for training, how they like it, and then what sorts of advocacy efforts could we undertake as part of CIRI as CIRI continues to grow and emerge. You can see we have the efforts that are related specifically to CIRI, as well as pre-conference workshops and mentoring, always very popular as well. And we had a good discussion about how to undertake some advocacy efforts for electronic records with those allied organizations. And we sort of narrowed down some of those that might need some extra attention, the National Governors Association and NASCIO, Attorneys General, INDIP. So there's various places to go, but those, particularly the governors and the CIOs and the Attorney General, were seen as a real focus for potential electronic records advocacy outreach work. The last we talked about in terms of a tabletop discussion involved advocacy and what steps that CoSA and state archives could take to build a good grassroots network to promote advocacy about archival and promote our agenda for advocacy. And so I'm going to let Jim report again. That topic continues from the work session into the business meeting report on advocacy. So Jim, if you want to kind of give us the summary of the advocacy report and talk a little bit about that work session discussion about building that grassroots network, that would be great.
Sure. Advocacy committee this year has done a strong job. It was just created under Matt's tenure as president, and so we have an advocacy committee that continues to operate. And, we've set some, both on the last year, we were able to help with the NHPRD funding issues and get to a point where we were supporting the National Archives, but also seeking some on how the grant that they were proposing could best work for CoSA and our membership across the states. On the slides here, CoSA is going to be focused over the next year and try to build a grassroots network, or I shouldn't say year, but years, beyond simply the activists and the SHRAB boards probably. We have a broad coalition that we can turn to, along with AA and Nagara, who are to help us in this effort, but a coalition so that we can really mobilize people and let legislators in a single state or legislators in Congress know that there are things that we need and have those be able to be heard to move things along, because that's very significant when they're counting votes in Congress. Would like all of you to help us continue to collect stories about how the state archives have made a difference in our lives or legislation or issues that have come about in the state where they've gone back to the state archives to find out what the real law said or whatever the issue may be, so that we tell the story and continue to reinforce why state archives are important. It'd be cool as we need to move forward, and that includes stories related to electronic records as we begin to develop those. I'm going to move on to the business session or the business meeting. As part of that conversation, we did ask the membership who we could be reaching out to. Are there interest groups or special groups that you think should be approached by CoSA's advocacy committee? There'd be natural partners, and so there was quite a conversation about some of that. And if you have ideas, please don't hesitate to send those either to one of the members of the advocacy committee, which includes, I should have probably said this at the beginning, Jelaine Chubb from Texas. I don't know, probably should have gone there. Barbara Teague from Kentucky, Mike Strom from Wyoming, myself, and Kathleen Rowe from New York. I'll send it to Ann Ackerson. But anyhow, there are nations in your state that you work with that may also have a national presence that we aren't traditionally thinking about. So hesitate to forward names like that. And Sarah, is there anything else around the business meeting that you want to cover, or the work session?
No, I think you got it.
Okay.
As the advocacy piece, that was the ending of our work session slides in the beginning of the business meeting. But at the business meeting, we really had a good opportunity to hear from our committees and hear a lot about their work that they've been undertaking this year. And it's a pleasure to hear these reports because there's just been a lot of really solid work done on these committees over the last year. And my version of the slides that I saw earlier did not have a picture of me and my lovely CoSA President Kate on. So, boy, I'm pleased to see that here. But Jim just gave us the advocacy update. So Sandy Treadway from Virginia is going to give us a brief update about the Development Committee and their work with corporate sponsorship.
Hi, everyone. I feel a little guilty giving this report because at the business meeting, Julia Marks Young from Mississippi, who chaired the Development Committee last year, spoke. And I really take my hat off and shout out to Julia for doing an excellent job. She's really given me a huge shoes to fill this year. But the Development Committee last year worked extremely hard, first of all, to expand, as we could, the corporate sponsorships that support the work that CoSA does. And there is a list of those on the CoSA website, which you can consult. Obviously, the big ones we've mentioned a little bit already, Ancestry, Family Search, but there's some interesting information there on Preservica, Gaylord, Media Preserve, and some of the other sponsors. So the first goal of the Development Committee going forward is really going to be to keep those relationships strong, to work with the CoSA board, to make sure that those sponsors remain committed and support CoSA. But if we want to grow and if we want to ensure the sustainability of our organization, we've got to identify new ones as well. And what the Development Committee did was met briefly at the conference, went through the list of exhibitors at the SAA meeting, and we divided up the list of exhibitors that we thought ought to have a strong interest in CoSA and that we wanted to make aware of our sponsorship opportunities. So we visited those vendors, established a first contact in many cases, and we'll be spending the next few months following up on those conversations and seeing if we can entice another sponsor or two to provide either in-kind or financial support to CoSA. We really want also to work with the board and especially with Anne to develop other ways to raise money. Many of you may have received the annual appeal this year. Expect to get another letter coming up because the annual appeal was very, very successful with board members and state archivists and others contributing whatever they could toward the good of the cause. And I have to toot Ann's horn. She worked with the development committee to start our first ever silent auction at the conference this year, and about the day-long event were terrific supporters, and it made more than $1,000. So we expect to expand that opportunity as well next year. And we very much do welcome ideas that the membership may have to areas we may not have thought of. The committee consists of myself, Barbara Teague of Kentucky, Matt Blessing from Wisconsin, and Steve Excel from Washington, as well as Ann. But if any of you listening would like to be part of the effort, please let Ann or myself know. We'd love to have you. Thanks.
That was great. Next, we're going to hear a little bit about what the program committee did this year. And Ann, I believe you're on tap to give that report.
I want to give a shout out to Susan Lugo, who led the program committee in last year, and Susan has rotated off the board. So the committee membership is now being taken up by a new board member, Steve Murray from Alabama, and we welcome his leadership program. The program committee has largely focused on creating these webinars, and they've done a whole year around the theme of rethinking resources. They have developed now the 2015 theme for webinars, which is going to be around the topic of project and program planning and management. And this topic is a direct result of what so many of you have told us that you want more information on. So we're going to in-depth look at a variety of case studies where project program success relies on deft management and a toolbox of skills and techniques. So tried and true or out of the box, this is an opportunity for you to learn from your colleagues about their approaches and insights to moving projects and programs from an idea to implementation. 2015 webinar schedule will soon be up on the CoSA website so that you can begin to plan which ones that you want to attend, and the committee will start their work in terms of identifying centers. We've already got some folks we're already starting to populate that schedule, and I think it's going to be really exciting. Committee this year going forward consists of Lisa Prince from Virginia, John Metz from Virginia, Lee Thompson from South Dakota, and Jesse Brown from New York State. So again, if any of you want to join this happy band doing programming for CoSA, please know, and we'll fold you into the mix. Sarah?
The last report that we had at the business meeting was the report task force, and that grew out of a group that was put together after the 2013 annual meeting to continue discussions with the Manuscript Society. That task force was led by Jim Cord. So Jim, if you want to give us the report from Plevin.
Sure. And I was joined on that committee by David Howery from Pennsylvania, who recently retired, Jelaine Chubb, Joe Klett from New Jersey, and Melanie Sturgeon from Arizona. Basically, the Plevin committee provided language to the Manuscript Society, and because we couldn't come to terms, what we ended up doing is saying they continue to accept and enforce or tool or a guide the procedures document that was developed by the two organizations probably 5 years ago, so that if there's an issue about replevin, a dispute, that there would be a procedure and process to follow to help try to resolve the dispute. That the document, there was another document that actually dealt with kind of a view and general view of the replevin world from which could not come to consensus. And so at this point, the CoSA board shared with the Manuscript Society that would be suspended until we could work out the differences in the language, and effectively CoSA has withdrawn from that agreement until we have it resolved. So that's the gist of that. And Sarah, if you don't mind, there's a couple things I forgot to mention under advocacy.
Sure.
Sorry. One is that this year we're going to be focused also in 2015 on efforts to reach out to Republican members in the House and Senate and approach them with a different normally have. And the advocacy committee is working on developing kind of a script or a narrative or making points, I guess would be the best term. Because it's going to be critical for us to turn some of the Republicans from opposing NHPRC and NARA or archive funding at the local level, kind of a PAR kind of thing, and getting them to begin to understand why it's important. We have opportunities like the hard failures and destruction of the IRS and EPA and some other places. I think Republicans could engage in the issue if we approach them correctly. So we're looking at that, and it'll probably be an effort that requires almost all of you to be involved. Then there will probably be efforts as normal to push our NHPRC funding this year. And last, I forgot to mention that SA and NAGARA and CoSA are all working together on a joint statement on public funding. I'm sure you'll all see sometime in the next few months. Thank you. That was it.
Great. I'm glad you mentioned the joint statement. That's great. And as both Ann and Sandy said, if you are at all interested in joining one of these committees or one of your staff members has an interest in any of these work areas, please let me know. My address once I became president of CoSA was focused on involvement, not just involvement of state archives directors, but also of their staff. We have a lot of great and productive work that's going on in these committees, and we could always use, new insights, more assistance, new directions. So that's great. So if you, after you get off this webinar, you know of a staff member who might be interested in, say, the program committee or development or advocacy, please do not hesitate to let us know, and we'll log in. One other important piece of the annual meeting included meeting with stakeholders. We had the opportunity to sit down and talk with allied organizations as well as our larger corporate sponsors and sort of take a pulse of our relationship. What do we need to work on? What's going to happen in the future? I will summarize here our corporate conversations before I turn it over to Matt Veach to talk a little bit about the Preservica Open Forum and the Sunlight Foundation. So slightly out of order here. As I said, our corporate sponsor conversations, we had very productive meetings with Ancestry and Family Search and Preservica to really talk about the details of our relationships. And I'm just going to summarize that very briefly. We will continue with our productive relationship with Ancestry, and we spent a lot of time discussing ways that they could assist us in basically promoting or advertising the importance of state archives and what that would look like, whether it's a social media campaign or advertisements or mention in their Who Do You Think You Are show, those sorts of opportunities. The Family Search meeting was so great. We had the opportunity to talk to them about the awards program that they sponsored this year, and they indicated that they will continuing to sponsor that program into next year. So that was a great piece of news as well. And then we also talked a little bit with them about project coming down the way. I think many of you are aware of the probate project that Ancestry and Family Search were working on together. And so we talked a little bit about a new one that's going to be coming relating to marriage records and trying to gather those into kind of a national database. So that was a great meeting with Family Search. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Matt to talk a little bit about Preservica and the Open Forum, and then Matt, if you would end with a little bit on your discussions with the Sunlight Foundation.
Sure. Thanks, Sarah. We had for those of you who were at the annual meeting, I saw many folks there after a very long afternoon work session. Many of you came over and participated in a digital preservation open forum that was hosted by Preservica. And as Sarah's mentioned, Preservica is sponsors. They're specifically sponsoring in 2014-2015 the State Electronic Records Initiative, or SEER, and they're focusing on their sponsorship will go towards enhancements to the PERTS portal that we recently launched to try to make it a little bit more interactive than it already is now. Particularly interested in helping us and providing some of their expertise and some of their already developed products or ideas, I guess, kind of wipers and other types of ideas that they put together regarding digital preservation and just kind of deliver those to us and help us deliver those through various education and training forums, particularly webinars and perhaps some workshops. And so the open forum was just an effort to gather, particularly state archive staff and state archivists themselves, to gather information on the kinds of questions that we're interested in discussing and exploring, and areas in which Preservica can offer some expertise to us, but they're not so much the focus on the Preservica product, but more of a focus on some of the issues and the problems and the questions that we have in our shops reading digital preservation. And so there was a really good conversation, a really good discussion, and out of that forum, we developed about 6 kind of actionable program items, and those include very interesting one. We had a fascinating discussion about something that we ended up calling the born archival records, which is something that needs a lot more thought and a lot more fleshing out. But it's the idea of trying to define or determine how we can make records more preservable from the point of creation, and perhaps even deal with records in the system of origin and apply preservation practices and best practices to those before they come to the archives, and perhaps they may never come to the archives. So that's something that we're hoping that we can have some kind of a workshop and maybe a white paper come out of that. We also talked about ways that Preservica could help us think through how implementing a digital preservation system could help us benchmark better on the digital preservation capability maturity model self-assessment that we've all been taking. How can we raise our scores by implementing some of a digital preservation system? So that would, again, be a white paper and perhaps a webinar. Some basic digital preservation training for folks who really need to see a hands-on demonstration of a complete digital preservation life cycle. And again, you could use because they're Preservica, they'll use the Preservica system as the demonstration tool, but it focus more on workflows and SIPs and DIPs and APEs and all of the things that comprise a full-on digital preservation system. A couple other issues that came up. All of us are interested in cost information, the cost of digital preservation over time. So Preservica has done a fair amount of work already relating to cost models, and also to develop packages related to the institutional making this case for digital preservation. So that is another opportunity for our work with Preservica to think through issues of concern to all of us. And finally, the final topic that we identified was aligning records management systems, electronic records management systems, with digital preservation systems. So what are the touch points and the connections between an electronic records management system and a trusted repository? And those are the 6 things. I thought it was a very good open forum, and then during our follow-up meeting with Preservica the next day, we kind of played out some of these ideas. And so over the course of 2014 and 15, various series subcommittees and the series steering committee will be working closely with Preservica staff to deliver some of these workshops and develop some of these white papers. So I think it's a good opportunity for us to work with some people in the digital preservation community who are actively involved in a wide range of digital preservation projects around the world. And then the second conversation that I was asked to talk about is one that we had, that Ann Ackerson and I had with by the name of Alicia Green, who is she's a policy fellow at the Sunlight Foundation. You've probably heard of them, but for those of you who haven't, they're an organization, nonprofit organization, dedicated to open government. And as Alicia came to the pretty entire conference, the entire joint annual meeting, and was thoroughly interested in things that archives or that archivists are thinking about, and attended many sessions. But as I talked with her, it was very clear that she and the Sunlight Foundation have a philosophy and a mission statement that very much aligns with the archival community, and particularly the state archives community. They're devoted to transparency in government. They're devoted to just open government generally, government accountability, and probably fundamentally just broad access to government information. And so as she was articulating the Foundation mission statement, I just kept thinking that those same words could have been made or been stated by a state archivist explaining what state archives do. And so we agreed just in the course of a very vibrant and animated half-hour discussion that their organization and state archives and archivists generally have a lot in common, and that we need to work more closely together. I want to mention that with the Sunlight Foundation, it did take away a lot from our conference, and she kind of summarized all of that in a blog post that she put up on the sunlightfoundation.com website August 22nd, and she very specifically calls out some of the work that CoSA is doing. She mentions and links to the PERTS portal and to our resource center, and very specifically calls for more collaboration between the open government community and the archival community generally. So I think that was a very positive thing. I've long thought that we had, long meaning a couple of years, thought that we had a lot in common with the open government community, and this certainly solidified my thinking on that. And I think as time goes on, I think we will find that we have a lot of common ground and areas of common interest that we can work together on. Sarah.
Thank you, Matt. Very busy meeting, but a very productive time to have those face-to-face conversations like he described with the Sunlight Foundation. And lastly, I'm going to let Ann report on the Committee on Archives, Libraries, and Museums conversation.
Sarah, I just want to briefly talk a little bit about this, but before I do, please note in the chat box I put the web address for that blog post that Matt was referring to from the Sunlight Foundation, so that you can access that. The Committee on Archives, Libraries, and Museums, also called CALM, is a committee of the American Library Association, SAA, and the American Alliance of Museums. And Susan Rowe, our former member from the Virgin Islands, and I attended their get-together as part of the annual meeting in Washington, where we had an opportunity to tell the group about CoSA and what CoSA does, and the work of state archives. The state archive community is not particularly well represented on this committee at this time, and our at their meeting was really the direct result of Susan's outreach to the group. She was with CALM folks to see if representatives from that committee would participate in one of our webinars, and in fact, will be the presenters, or people from them, I should say, will be the presenters at our October webinar. We're talking about specifically archives, libraries, and museum partnerships. So if you're interested in that time, please join us for our October webinar. I think that we've ourselves, and we've talked about CoSA, and we're, I think, more on the radar screen of CALM, where this may go. But short term, we have a relationship, and going to be joining us for the webinar, and we'll see where it takes us. But again, another, I think, important connection to have made at the annual meeting, and we're looking for ways to evolve and to with CALM support from the CALM front.
Okay, sounds great. Okay, fun part to the annual meeting is always the awards, and this year with the new program sponsored by Family Search, we had a lot of good publicity for those awards, including at the opening plenary session for the joint annual meeting, where some of the biggest awards were presented, including the Victoria Irons-Walsh Leadership Award, which went this year to Christine Ward, who is the New York State Archivist. She is retiring as of today, I think. She's also been a CoSA board member, CoSA treasurer, so she's really done a lot of service to CoSA, but also with her state and to the profession at large. So we were pleased to present her with that leadership award. And then the Victoria Irons-Walsh Leadership Travel Stipend, which goes to a staff member getting them the opportunity to come to an annual meeting. It's really for an up-and-coming leader in the field. And that went to Veronica Martzel from the Massachusetts State Archives. And I'm pleased to announce that Veronica will also be the CIRI co-chair in the coming year. So it was great she was available to receive that award as well. CoSA Advocacy for Archives Award this year is going to Congressman David Price from North Carolina for his support and leadership in saving NHPRC from being zeroed out in House funding. Jim Corwin and I will present that award to Representative Price in his Washington office on September 18th. He was unable to attend the joint annual meeting in D.C. as Congress was out of session at the time, so he was out of the area. And the Rising Star Award went to the Governor Timothy Kane email project team for work in the processing and making available of the Governor Kane email in Virginia. So those were the awards presented at the plenary session. And President Matt Veach presented a number of awards at our work session, including awards to the three people who worked very hard on the Joint Annual Meeting Program Committee, Jamie Awalt, Matt Blessing, and John Metz, and to Dave Jones for his work with NHPRC on the report to the President and sort of getting input from the CoSA perspective as that report was being developed. Asked kind of on short notice by the Governor's Association to update the Governor's Records Guide that we've worked with them on in the past, and they wanted it updated so after this election it could be available to pass out to new governors, and so several people stepped up to the plate on short notice and helped edit all or part of that document, providing input on what we could do to bring it up to current information, and that included Patricia Smith-Mansfield from Utah, Steve Murray from Alabama, Wayne Moore from Tennessee, Lizette Pelletier from Connecticut, Bonnie Weddle from New York, and Kelly Eubank from North Carolina. The task force also earned an award, as Jim outlined their work, what they did with the Manuscript Society and talking about our agreement with them. Number of President's Awards for outstanding service for various activities and involvement in CoSA, and I would highlight people like Susan Lugo, who was a board member, and Julia Marks-Young, who was a board member, both rotating off the board and had chaired major committees that really expanded and grew over the last year, and Barbara Teague, who serves on a number of committees and subcommittees within CoSA, as does Pat Michaelis from Kansas, so that there were a number of outstanding service awards. The other thing that was announced recently was the inaugural Ancestry.com Leadership Award, and I'm going to turn it back over to Ann to give a little summary of what that award looks like and talk a little bit about the requirements for application.
We're really excited about this award. This is a joint award, CoSA Ancestry.com, towards the leadership development of mid-professionals in our state archives. And the deadline for applying for this award is pretty fast, September 15th. What the award provides is, first, right out of the gate, it provides $1,000 for a mid-professional to attend leader training. That, however that's defined in your institution. And subsequently, it will provide funds and registration to come to the 2015 annual meeting, where our award recipients will present to the CoSA work session that Ancestry sponsors, by the way. They will be able to make a short presentation about their experience, their professional development experience. So we anticipate giving 2 awards as I said, the deadline is September 15th. We anticipate turning that around very quickly so that we can announce those awards in October, which means that any of you listening today who are thinking about need to be working on that right now and identifying what professional opportunity you want to take advantage of and submit that. So I'm happy to talk with anyone more about about these awards and what particularly we're looking for. But keep in mind in its first year, so we know that we'll strengthen the program as it goes on. But we're just really excited to have this opportunity with Ancestry, and the information is available on our website. So read a little bit more about it. The form is there for nomination, and be in touch with me if you have any questions.
All right. BP is on the horizon in Montgomery, Alabama in November, creating capital connections. We encourage you to think about proposals for the program committee and get those in. The website is listed there for the program submissions. Always promises to be a great meeting. Tuesday is coming up on 10/10 or October 10th. And we ask, how will you promote it? This is our annual time using social media, blogs, print, what other kind of articles or events or things you want to do to raise awareness both to the public and to state agencies or local government offices about the importance of electronic records management and preservation. So whatever you do, please feel free to share it so we have an idea of what's going on across the country for 10/10 Day. Also coming up this fall is the second of the Advanced Electronic Records Institutes to be held in Salt Lake City in October. If you are in a state or territory that is west of the Mississippi, you should have already gotten your email for registration for the Institute. And there were a couple other states, if you couldn't go to the one in the east and you were signed up to go to the one in the west, you should have gotten that as well. There is no charge for one participant to attend the Institute, and please look for that email from Becky Juleson and complete the travel survey so that we can make our final arrangements for numbers for the Institute. I wanted to remind everyone of the $1,000 scholarships that are available to each state and territory through September of 2015, coming out of the city IMLS grant. If you haven't spent any money or haven't spent all of your money, don't forget about that. That's available to attend existing continuing education programs on electronic records, such as BPE, or such as sending another attendee to the Institute, or going to DAS workshops, or other training that's out there on electronic records management and preservation. So don't forget about your scholarship money. And Becky, do you want to talk a little bit about the PERTS portal and the IPER self-directed modules?
Yes. Many of you already know the portal went live on July 1st, and it's basically our go-to place for electronic records tools and standards and training, educational and training opportunities and resources. And we're still considering it in a mode because we are making a few, minor things to it. Nothing to really change how it functions overall. It's in there. Go ahead, use it. Let us know what you think. Add a resource if there's a resource that you think really needs to be in there and it's not in there. Is a way within the portal to set that resource for our review, and then we'll put that up in there. So if you have go ahead and take a peek at it and look at it, and hope you all enjoy it and find it very useful. The other thing that is new as of, I guess, probably just days ago, the IPER section in the Resource Center has been updated. We now have the ER and the Reaper course materials, so the instructor guides and participant guides are up in there for everybody to access. There's no password needed or anything. You don't need an account. It's just all up there, open to public, as well as all the handouts shall be more easily accessible. As the self-directed training modules for both courses, we had sent out these to everybody, and those got a little wonky and stopped working for most of us. And thanks to Montana, they were able to fix their CD and their courses and sent us those. So those are all up on the website. You download it right from Source Center. I was having a little bit of trouble with Internet Explorer using it, so it might just depend on your version of your browser, but Firefox worked great for me, but people in Montana said Internet Explorer worked great for them. So it might just depend on your version. And we also have the Introduction to Records and Information Management course, narrated PowerPoint presentation. That's available right on our website again as well. Go out to a different state's website to access that. And that's actually located under the programs section in the Resource Center. It's not in hyper or emergency preparedness. We moved into the program section. So if you have those things, let me know. I'm happy to answer any questions. Thanks.
Okay, Becky. And really about the PERTS portal, that is really designed to be, as she said, a living tool. So please don't be shy. If you have resources from your own state, policies, procedures, tools you're using, that's the place to go on the portal to contribute links and material information about those things that you are using, because we can all learn from each other. So let's keep that a real living space and provide feedback if you're up there and you have a suggestion about the portal. As Becky said, it's still in beta mode. Welcome your input on what you're thinking about, what you're finding when you're on the portal. Other thing that we don't have on the slide that's up and coming this fall, we will probably have our biennial ARMS survey coming to you. That was also mentioned in the work session just very briefly. That will be the shorter version, and some of the focus will be on trying to right-size the data that we are collecting about budget. So we're going to be a little more specific about what budgeting information you want so that we can truly compare the same types of programs across the states. Sometimes there's a little bit of mismatch. If, for example, I turn in budget figures for my state and I'm also running a museum and historic sites, that truly archives, all archives related. So we're going to try to provide some additional guidance on how to make sure that we're asking the same things and measuring the same things across each of the states. So that's coming up as well. Time for some questions or comments before we get to our list of upcoming webinars. Does anybody have any questions we've covered or comments? You can put it in the chat or. Okay, let me know. Here's our list of upcoming webinars. Since we developed this slide, we've added another one that's going to be next Tuesday, September 4th at 3:30. We have an announcement out about that pretty soon. That's really going to be kind of an informal webinar. What we're going to do is Beth Fields and I are going to host an informal discussion about topics that might be suitable for the NHPRC Electronic Government Records grant program that would be collaborative in nature. I know that NHPRC has had some webinars of their own where they discuss the program and the eligibility requirements and all the deadlines associated with it. This is not meant to duplicate that. This webinar we've thrown together for next Thursday, the 4th, is to try to give ourselves some time to talk about what ideas do you have? Do you think anyone could partner with you on that idea to make a collaborative grant? So as I said, it'll be kind of informal and just really more of a moderated discussion. So look for that one. And then also coming up the following week on September 9th, we're going to be hearing from Meg Phillips talking about some records management initiatives and updates from NARA. And then September 25th is another SHRAB Town Hall, and another Siri webinar follows on October 14th talking about electronic records ingest. And then as Ann mentioned in one of her reports on October 30th, we're going to hear a little bit more about CALM. So those are upcoming webinars.
And to repeat, the first webinar, the free webinar next week?
Yeah, Thursday the 4th at 3:30, I believe. Becky, is that what I told you? I think that's right.
Yes, I think it's 3:30 Eastern.
Yes. Like I said, that's not really a formal one like we have our normal Siri webinars or the member webinars. It's going to be more moderated discussion and just kind of an open discussion time to brainstorm some ideas, see if we can develop any partnerships on grant applications. Those application drafts are due October 1st, so we were trying to get together earlier in the month so that there was an opportunity to sort of flesh that out if that was possible. But next real Siri webinar with a formal presentation like today will be September 9th, and that will be the one with Meg Phillips from NARA. Other questions?
Got a question box, Sarah?
Susan, yes, Susan's asking if her CIO came along to the September 4th webinar. Sure. They may be able to provide some feedback on feasibility of a collaborative effort, or also similarly, here's some ideas that may be suitable just for the Virgin Islands or free state or territory. So yes, if your CIO is available, work with them. Steve's Montgomery's a great city to visit. Okay. Well, here sponsors. I don't know, Ann, if you want to say anything about anything in particular about our sponsors.
I think turn it over to Mary Dola at this point for her to close us out.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Each year, CoSA's corporate partnerships provide critical funding support for many CoSA membership activities and events. We are especially grateful to Ancestry.com and our other corporate sponsors, including Family Search, Gaylord, Hollander Metal Edge, Media Preserve History Channel. And we also have support for program initiatives generously provided by grants from NHPRC and IMLS. If you want to stay informed with what CoSA is doing, please visit our website and the Resource Center, subscribe to the CoSA blog, or follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. And when you exit the webinar today, you will automatically be taken to an online evaluation form. Please take a couple of minutes to answer the questions on the survey. Your answers really do help us plan future webinars. I thank you all for attending the webinar today. Please enjoy the rest of your day.